Scott, the Dodgers are in bankruptcy court. The judge has ruled the team has to borrow $150 million from Major League Baseball. That's probably enough money to get the team through the season, working capital, meet payroll, and so forth. But I think you and I and everybody else knows that unless the team's owner, Frank McCourt, can get a new deal with Fox and get a big upfront payment on that deal, something in the area of $300 million to help him pay down debt, his ownership is, in my words, tenuous, let's say. Do you think that Bud Selig is really right? He's been refusing to let McCourt do that so far because he just feels that too much of that money is not going to be put back into the Dodgers, that McCourt's going to use it to settle some of his personal debts.
Yeah, at the core of this issue is really the question of if you get a large upfront fee from Fox in this case, are you really sort of selling forward the future revenues for the Dodgers, and how does that impact franchise value? And I think when Bud Selig or any other commissioner thinks about these contracts, they're thinking about the best interest of their league, in this case baseball, over the long term. So assume for a second that Frank McCourt isn't the owner of this club for the next 10 years. If you needed to sell it, will you realize sort of full value for the Dodgers if he's extracted a large amount of the revenues on the media side up front? And how does that impact the franchise going forward in terms of its cash flows and its ability to meet debt service, to meet payroll? Frankly, it's an issue for players too, as they think about what's available for player compensation over the course of the next 10 years. The more teams that are taking upfront money and putting it in their pocket or distributing it or doing it, for some other personal reason, that means that there's less dollars coming out of those media contracts going forward, less money on the table for the players.
Do you think the commissioner could also be thinking a little about and saying, you know what, if, as you just described, that money from the new cable deal is being used to pay off McCourt's current bills and some of his personal expenses and so forth, and then he sells the team anyway, like you said, because he doesn't have the cash flow to grow the business, that could lead to a depressed sale price and possibly set the bar lower when somebody else is looking to buy a different team, because they're going to say, gee, the Dodgers just sold for 2 times revenue instead of 3 times revenue. Is there any of that impact, or is every transaction completely isolated?
No, I think it's a very real consideration for Bud and the other owners around Major League Baseball. We saw a very similar sort of debate with regards to season tickets. There were some companies out there that wanted to help people to sell forward their season ticket money, basically borrow against those future revenues, or even on a naming rights deal. Does the team have the ability to take their naming rights contract and monetize it and bring all that revenue forward? And it all comes back to the same issue, which is that you're sort of stealing from the future earnings potential of the club in order to realize some value now. And the leagues are very careful about that.
Yeah, I think it was the Memphis Grizzlies that did that with the naming rights to their arena of the NBA.
Right.
FedEx, they monetized it. The owner took the money out, and it's come back to haunt him for sure. Again, with all the rich guys that you're always on the phone with, they're always talking about trying to see if there are any teams for sale. How hot a property would the Dodgers be if all of a sudden the judge said, you know what, we've got to put this team for sale?
A lot of pluses for the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's the second largest media market in the country, second to New York. It's a storied franchise. A lot of people remember when the team played here in Brooklyn, and they remember that their father or their grandfather had an affinity for the club even when it was here in New York. I think it's going to be a very hot property.
Well, the last big market baseball team that was sold really, I guess, was the Cubs.
Yes.
Certainly a bigger market than the Texas Rangers. And the Cubs, if you count the 25% stake in the regional sports network, it was $840 million. If you look at the Dodgers, bigger market, probably more potential, particularly if they could get that new cable deal done. Are we talking about a sale price, you think, in excess of $1 billion possibly?
I think it'll be in that neighborhood. I sincerely do. And I think you're right. I think that the Cubs will be the transaction that everyone looks at, probably the Einhorn transaction with the Mets too, in terms of trying to figure out how do we value these things. Those will be the 2 most important data points. But I think you'll be pushing $1 billion for the Dodgers.